It's 3 a.m., and something wakes you. The house is silent. The doors are locked. There's nothing in your home that can hurt you, and on some level, you know that. And yet, you don't turn on the light. You lie there, perfectly still, barely breathing, listening, because a part of you is absolutely convinced that the second your barefoot slips off the edge of the bed, something is going to close around your ankle and pull. You're an adult. You've walked that dark hallway 10,000 times and found nothing every single time. It doesn't matter. The fear doesn't care what you know. It was already awake before you were. And here is what makes that so strange. We are the most dangerous animal that has ever lived. We conquered every continent, wiped out the great predators, and turned night into something we could switch on and off with a finger. We are the thing that the darkness itself learned to fear. So why, after all of that, are we still afraid of the dark? Let's start with the answer, because it's not the one you're expecting. You are not afraid of the dark. The dark is nothing. It's empty. It has no teeth, no claws, no weight, no intention. Darkness has never harmed a single living thing, because darkness isn't a thing at all. It's just the absence of one. What you're actually afraid of is what the dark does to you. Because in a single, silent instant, without touching you, without making a sound, the dark reaches in and switches off the one weapon your entire species was built around. It takes your eyes. And the moment it does, you stop being the apex predator that rules the daylight world. You become something older and far more frightened. You become blind. To understand why losing your sight feels like losing everything, you have to understand just how much of you is built out of seeing. We are daytime animals, creatures of the sun. Almost everything about the human body is a monument to vision. Your eyes face forward, locked together and aimed the same way. The exact arrangement you find in hawks and wolves and lions, and almost every dedicated hunter on Earth. You gave up the wide, over-the-shoulder view of a prey animal in exchange for something sharper, focused, three-dimensional, distance-measuring sight. And you see the world in full color, which most mammals simply can't. A dog or a deer moves through a muted world of blues and dull yellows, unable to tell a ripe red from a leafy green. You can. And the leading explanation for why is almost quaint. Somewhere back down the primate family tree, being able to pick out red fruit against a wall of green leaves was worth growing a whole extra channel of color vision for. But here's the real cost of all that seeing. Roughly a third of your cortex, the wrinkled outer surface of the brain that does your highest thinking, is handed over to vision alone. Compare that to around 8% for touch and a mere 3% for hearing. More of your mind is spent turning light into a world than on hearing, touch, taste, and smell put together. You don't just use your eyes. You are, in the most literal sense, a machine for seeing. So think about what actually happens when the light goes out. It isn't that the room gets darker. It's that the largest, most powerful part of your brain suddenly goes quiet. The main channel your mind uses to understand reality is cut mid-sentence. You are not simply standing in a dark room. You are a seeing animal that has just gone blind. And somewhere underneath your calm adult thoughts, your body knows it. And here's the part that makes that blindness so much worse. Because when your advantage switches off, someone else's switches on. For almost every creature that would ever want to hurt you, the darkness isn't a handicap, it's home turf. Picture the eyes of a cat caught in a beam of light, that eerie, floating flash of green gold. That glow has a name. It's called the tapetum lucidum, a mirror-like layer sitting just behind the retina. It catches whatever light the eye failed to absorb the first time and bounces it back through for a second pass, wringing a usable picture out of almost nothing. In a cat, it cuts the amount of light needed to see by around 6 times. Cats have it. Wolves have it. Crocodiles have it. Nearly every creature built to move through the night has it. You don't. Almost no primate does. So while your eyes are still hopelessly fumbling in the black, theirs are wide open, drinking in a world you cannot even perceive. And it isn't only their eyes. Their ears swivel toward a sound you'll never catch. Their nose reads the wind like a map. Everything the darkness takes away from you, it quietly hands to them. For hundreds of thousands of years, this was the whole game. In the daylight, we were untouchable, coordinated, clever, armed, apex. But at night, the board flipped. Night was the one window when the great hunters got their advantage back, when the blind, sleeping, defenseless ape was finally worth the risk. We built fire to hold that darkness at bay. But fire only ever bought a small, flickering circle of safety. And every one of our ancestors understood, in their bones, exactly what waited in the black just beyond the reach of the flames. The dark was never empty. The dark was where we lost. But that still leaves a puzzle. Because you, tonight, are not sleeping in the open. There is no leopard in your hallway. You know that. So why does the fear fire anyway? The answer is that evolution never built you an accurate alarm. It built you a survivable one. And those are not the same thing. Imagine one of your ancestors hearing a rustle in the dark grass. There are 2 possibilities. It's the wind, or it's a predator. And there are two ways to be wrong. They can assume it's a predator when it's only the wind, and lose nothing but a jolt of fear and a moment of feeling foolish. Or they can assume it's the wind when it's really a predator, and lose everything, their life and every child they might ever have had. Those two mistakes are not equal, not even close. You can afford to be wrong about the wind 1,000 times. You can only be wrong about the predator once. And this isn't just a nice idea. It has a name. The psychiatrist Randolph Nesse calls it the smoke detector principle. Think about the alarm in your kitchen. It shrieks at burnt toast, steam, a hot pan, constantly, annoyingly wrong. And we build it that way on purpose, because 100 false alarms cost you nothing but irritation, while a single missed fire costs you the house. Biologists call the wider rule error management. When one mistake is far deadlier than the other, the mind evolves a built-in bias toward the cheaper one. So evolution cranked the fear up until it screamed at shadows, because a jumpy ancestor left more descendants than a calm one. Every human alive is the child of the ones who assumed the worst in the dark and lived to be embarrassed about it. That fear you feel at 3 a.m. isn't a flaw in the system. It is the system. It's a smoke detector doing exactly the job it was built for, screaming at burnt toast, because the one time it isn't toast, it saves your life. And now we reach the strangest part of all, because your brain doesn't just wait, tense and silent, for a threat to appear in the dark. It manufactures one. Remember, a huge part of your mind exists only to process what your eyes send it. So what happens to all that machinery when the eyes go dark and send nothing? It doesn't switch off. It goes looking. Starved of real information, the most powerful pattern finder in the known universe starts filling the emptiness with patterns of its own. And it has a favorite pattern: faces. You carry a patch of brain called the fusiform face area, wired almost entirely to detect them, and it fires faster than conscious thought. It is so eager to find a face that it sees them where none exist: in a wall socket, in the front of a car, in the folds of a curtain. Scientists call it pareidolia, and it's dialed up that high for the oldest reason there is. To an ancestor staring into the gloom, mistaking a bush for a hidden face cost nothing but a jolt of fear. Mistaking a hidden face for a bush cost you your life. So this is why the coat slung over the chair becomes a hunched figure. Why the shadow in the doorway seems to lean and breathe and watch. Why a pile of laundry at the foot of the bed grows a face if you stare at it long enough. Your brain is so desperate to find the shape of a threat in the dark that, when it can't find one, it simply builds one out of whatever is lying around. The monster was never in the room. The monster is being generated, in real time, by the most anxious, imaginative, threat-obsessed organ that nature has ever produced, sitting right behind your eyes. In the dark, you're not afraid of what's out there. You are afraid of what your own mind keeps insisting must be out there. And it is a far better storyteller than any real predator ever was. And while your mind is busy inventing shapes, the dark does one more thing to you. It reaches over and turns up the volume on everything else. With your dominant sense knocked out, your brain scrambles to promote the others in its place. Hearing goes first. Suddenly you can hear the house, really hear it, the tick of it cooling, the low hum of the refrigerator, a single creak in a floorboard that has creaked every night for 20 years and never once meant a thing. In daylight, your eyes would have explained every one of those sounds before you even noticed them. In the dark, there is nothing to explain them, so each one arrives naked, unaccounted for, and your threat-primed brain hands it the worst possible source. That creak isn't the house settling. It's a footstep. That hum isn't the fridge. It's breathing. And time warps, too. Lying awake and listening in the dark, a few minutes can swell into what feels like an hour, because a brain on high alert samples the world faster and stretches every second longer. The dark doesn't just blind you. It sharpens you down into a single raw listening nerve, and then it feeds that nerve nothing at all but questions. Now, it would be easy to write all of this off. To say it's just imagination, just nerves, just childish nonsense we should have outgrown. Except you can put it under a microscope, and when scientists do, the fear turns out to be startlingly, measurably real. Bring people into a lab, sit them down and, every so often, hit them with a sudden harmless burst of noise, the kind of sharp sound that makes anyone in the world flinch. Then run it twice, once with the lights on, once in total darkness. Nothing else changes. Same room, same people, same noise. And in the dark, the flinch gets bigger. Measurably, reliably bigger. Not because anything is there. Only the light is gone. And here is the detail that gives the whole thing away. When the researchers compared how hard each person jumped in the dark against how afraid of the dark they had been as children, the two lined up. The adults whose bodies flinched hardest in the darkness were the very ones who'd been most frightened of it as kids. The fear never actually left them. It just went quiet and waited for the lights to go out. It happens even to people who swear the dark doesn't bother them. Their conscious mind says, "I'm fine." Their nervous system disagrees. Darkness quietly lifts the body's baseline state of alarm and puts someone under stress first, and the effect only grows stronger. Your body treats the simple absence of light as a warning sign entirely on its own. And it singles out the dark for a reason. We are daytime animals, built to own the light and to distrust the night. For 10,000 generations, that distrust wasn't a quirk. It was the difference between waking up and not. And there's one more clue that this thing is built in, not picked up. It's the most revealing clue of all. Watch a small child in the dark. No one sits a toddler down and teaches them to fear it. And yet, right on schedule, it arrives. The certainty that something lives under the bed, that something waits in the closet, that the hallway is not safe once the light clicks off. And the schedule is remarkably precise. The fear tends to surface around the age of 2, sharpen to a peak around 4, and it is staggeringly common. In one study of children between 4 and 12, more than 7 in 10 said they had fears that came alive at night. It shows up in kids who've never been hurt, never been threatened, never even heard a scary story. It shows up on its own, right around the age our ancestors' children first began to wander a few steps away from the fire on their own 2 feet. A fear that arrives that reliably, on that kind of timetable, in that many children, without anyone teaching it. That isn't a lesson, it's an inheritance. It comes pre-installed, switched on at the exact moment in a young life when the dark first starts to matter. We often say a child will grow out of it, but that's not quite what happens. We don't outgrow the fear. We just grow a thick layer of adult reasoning on top of it. Walls of logic and locked doors, and there's nothing there. And at 3 a.m., when the house creaks and your foot hangs off the edge of the bed, you find out exactly how thin that layer really is. The fear is so old, in fact, that it did something remarkable. It escaped our bodies and crawled into our stories. Think about where the monsters live. Every single one of them. Across every mythology humanity has ever written, the things that hunt us wait in the dark. Demons come at night. Ghosts haunt the midnight hour. Vampires burn in the sun and rule the black. The devil is the prince of darkness, never the prince of noon. Look at the very words we use. We speak of dark times, dark thoughts, our darkest hours, a dark side. Light means truth, goodness, safety, knowledge, hope. Dark means evil, death, ignorance, the unknown. That split runs so deep and so wide, through so many separate cultures, that it can't be a coincidence anyone invented. It's the same ancient fear, wearing 1,000 different masks. And listen to the stories we tell our children. The oldest ones, the ones that survived 1,000 years of retelling, because something in them refused to be forgotten. The child is always warned not to go into the woods after dark. The wolf, the witch, the thing with too many teeth always comes at night. We have been whispering the same warning to our young for longer than we've had writing to record it. When the light goes, the world is no longer yours. Stay close, stay near the fire. We didn't just feel the dark. We built entire religions, myths, and languages around the terror of it. The monster under the bed and the demon in the scripture are the same creature. They both crawled out of the same place, that black blind edge just past the firelight, where for 100,000 years the things that ate us actually lived. So here we are. And this is where the whole story bends into something almost tragic and a little bit beautiful, because we won. We beat the dark. We took fire and tamed it down into a switch on the wall. An electric light has only been flooding our nights for about a century and a half, a flicker of an eye in the life of a species. We built walls and roofs and locks. We pushed the great predators to the far edges of the earth, into documentaries and zoos and memory. For the overwhelming majority of people alive today, the odds that anything is waiting in the dark to eat you are, functionally, 0. We solved the problem. Completely. But evolution is slow. Agonizingly, gloriously slow. It works across tens of thousands of years, and the safe, lit, locked-up world you live in was built in barely more than 100. In the timeline of your body, the leopards left about 5 minutes ago, and nobody has told your nervous system that they're gone. So the alarm keeps running. Faithfully. Pointlessly. It's guarding you against a threat that, for you, no longer exists. A smoke detector still shrieking in a house where the fire went out 10,000 years ago. It's the same reason you crave sugar and fat you don't need. For almost all of human history, sweet and fatty food was rare and precious and worth chasing, so your body still hunts it in a world where it's everywhere. Your instincts are running software written for a world that has already vanished, one where the sugar was scarce and the dark was genuinely trying to kill you. The danger is gone. The fear never got the message. But even that isn't the whole truth. There's one last layer underneath it, and it's the one that should genuinely change how you feel the next time you're standing in a dark room. Because the dark doesn't frighten us because of what might be out there. It frightens us because of what it takes away. Every other fear you have, you can, in theory, do something about. You can run from it, fight it, look it in the eye. But the dark attacks you before any monster ever could. It disarms you. In one silent instant, it strips away the sight that made you powerful, the sense you trust above all others, the very thing that lets you stand at the top of the world, and it hands you back, blind and fumbling and slow, to the exact creature you used to be. The one that lay in the open, defenseless, and prayed the night would end. That's the real terror. Not that there's a predator in the room, but that the dark has quietly turned you back into prey. It doesn't need to send a monster at all. It only has to take away your eyes, and then let the oldest memory you own do the rest. And remember what the darkness once knew about us. The great hunters of the world learned, over countless bloody generations, to fear the human being, to avoid the upright silhouette, to flee the sound of our voices, to leave the sleeping camp alone. But they learned all of that in the light, by the fire, in the open, where they could see exactly what we were and how dangerous we'd become. In the dark, that lesson is void. In the dark, the old contract is torn up, and for a few blind hours the ancient terms come creeping back. The dark is the one place on earth where being human doesn't protect you, where you can't be seen to be feared. And some part of you, older than language, older than memory, remembers being on the losing side of that bargain. It remembers when we were the ones who got eaten. And every single night, when the light goes out, it wakes up, and it stands guard, just in case the world has slipped back to the way it used to be. So the next time it happens, the next time you lie frozen at 3 a.m., or reach for the light switch a half second faster than you'd ever admit to anyone, I want you to understand what that fear actually is. It isn't weakness. It isn't childishness. It isn't a flaw you should have outgrown. It's the oldest inheritance you own. It was paid for by millions of ancestors who lay awake in the dark and listened and were afraid. And because they were afraid, they lived long enough to pass that fear down to you. Every pounding heartbeat in a dark hallway is 100,000 years of survival, still standing watch over a threat that has almost, but not quite, disappeared. You are not afraid of the dark because something is wrong with you. You're afraid of the dark because your ancestors were, and every last one of them was right. So tonight, when you turn off the light and feel that small, ancient prickle at the back of your neck, don't fight it. Don't be embarrassed by it. Just understand it for what it is, the most loyal part of you, doing the only job it was ever given, keeping you alive until morning. The fear kept us alive for 100,000 years. But here's the question that should keep you up tonight. If the dark is so terrifying, if every instinct we own is screaming at us to run from it, then why do we keep going back? Why do we turn off the lights on purpose and tell each other ghost stories and pay good money just to be afraid? Why do we love the very thing we were built to fear?